So the next topic on our show notes is series we've been watching as of late. I know the first one I haven't I'm behind on two of these shows that we have listed on the show notes, so I'll kind of let you explain your thoughts on it. The first one is Bloom Into You, but I've put in the Japanese titling of it. So if you want to explain that, or kind of just you don't have to really explain it for the audience. I'm pretty sure they know most of these series, but if you just want to kind of go over your thoughts on Bloom Into You, and then we'll just go on down the list.
Oh, there's so many good things about Bloom Into You. So, Bloom Into You, or Yagata Kimi ni Naru, is a Yuri manga which started just not too long ago, actually. I think the first chapter came out in 2015. And it just kind of naturally blew up and was the natural rival of Citra. But the anime adaptation has just been so phenomenal. They add so much to the story that the manga just can't do because it's in manga form, and it adds music, it adds beautiful animation, colors, voices, everything about it is just so great. I really can't explain exactly what makes it so amazing just in animated form. Maybe it's because I've been a fan for so long that just watching it animated makes me feel so happy.
And I was going to tell the audience watching at home, since this is a podcast format, I'll put up on the title card on the right screen. Kay also did the video on the series, the manga-wise, so if you want to check that on her channel, you can at the top right of the screen right now. So was there anything else you wanted to touch upon on Bloom Into You before we move on to the next one we both watched?
Well, it's basically a really beautiful explanation of a girl figuring out her sexuality and falling in love just naturally without really understanding why. So yeah, if you're into romance, I highly recommend it.
I feel just to touch upon it, because I haven't watched it yet, but I feel a lot of Yuri manga are they're taken a lot more serious than harems, because harem anime is just I got so many options on who to fuck, instead of just being exploring people's personality and what does it mean to actually fall in love with someone.
Right. A lot of romance, well, I say romance in quotes because there really isn't any specific romance. We have harems, but I honestly don't really count those, just because they're meant to be a bunch of girls liking you as the viewer, and they don't really have much depth beyond that. They like the main character because it's you and you should be liked, and they like the main character because he's nice and he does a deed for them and they fall for him. Whereas something like Tsukigakire or Bloom Into You, they really explore what is this person, what goes on through their head, why am I interested in this person specifically when I could be liking someone else,
Yeah, and well, I can't really touch upon or have much insight on it. An issue I had a problem with that was in ReZero, where Subaru he confesses and he says, I love Amelia, Amelia's my life and everything. It's okay, why? It's oh, she saved me that one time. Don't it's not really a reason, but okay. It's you get those incidents that where they're not very fleshed out or explained. They're just oh, this incident is why I love this person forever, and it's just you can kind of delve that a bit more, but most companies don't. They're just okay, we'll just give them this one scenario, this one reason, and they're just in love forever. And it's no,
with one person forever.
Right.
That's the problem I had with Nisekoi. At the very end of Nisekoi, spoilers, he doesn't choose Onodera, and she kind of lives out her life still thinking about him, even though she still has she ends up with someone else and has a child, but she's still thinking about Raku.
Yeah, and I think that honestly should have been a side story. So because as an adult, because I'm we're all fucking adults watching this show talking about this stuff. As an adult, that really does affect with you as a person, because you start thinking to yourself, what if I done this different? What if I done this or that? If I would have said this, as you grow older and as you mature as a person, you start to poke holes at everything you do and say in life, and kind of your personality as a whole. So I felt that in that series, that should have been touched upon, because I know that's just Shonen Jump, blah blah blah, too much time wasting. But I felt that could have been its own separate thing and done very well if getting the time and the chance to done that, or do that rather. But was that it for Bloom Into You?
Yeah, you can watch Bloom Into You on High Dive. It's like a $4.99 subscription. But if you only want to watch Bloom Into You and not anything else on High Dive, you can like use Verve, right? They're like connected now, where you can watch any High Dive show on.
And speaking of Bloom Into You, for right now it's the first episode. I think the second episode comes up a little bit later, but it's also picked up by Funimation Entertainment.
The Sentai.
It's Sentai. Okay.
And it's being dubbed. I think the 6th episode. They're up to 6 episodes as of this, like, in English dub.
I love how
so
you
if
say.
You're into English dub.
I love how you say Sentai, and I'm looking at it right in front of me that says Sentai, so it works. Fucking stupid, bro. Like, I'm dead ass. Like, I'm looking straight at it, and it says Sentai in front of my face.
I'm kind of glad that Sentai has it. Because what Sentai does is they really take care of their licenses, and whenever they have like a limited edition box set, it's really detailed and there's so much love and care put into it. They'll have like the original artist like do a box just for this edition, and it's just really, it makes it a lot more special than like the Funimation boxes, where I feel like they just kind of put the key art on the front and like call it a day.
That's why I'm glad Sentai picked up Made in Abyss. Funimation definitely wouldn't have promoted that one, DVD or anime wise. They're good with this shit. So, I have watched this. I yet to know how to pronounce his name correctly. Uzumaid. Uzumaid. There we go. Okay.
Uzumaid.
So, a lot of people may not know of the series, and if you have, it's probably from negative YouTubers and critics alike. But just to start off, I want to say, this may be my second favorite anime this year. Like, not just the winter, fall season, I mean just as a whole, like number 2. Because, and I'll kind of explain this since you've kind of delved into Bloom Into You a lot. The reason why Uzumaid, did I say that correctly?
Uzumaid.
Okay, I'm gonna fuck that up. But the reason why I love this show so much is because it's those incidents where we explain how comedy is portrayed. And I felt like watching this sub, even though, you know, it's not like my native language or whatever, I still find it a lot of fun. It's very funny. I've gotten to episode 4 of 5, and instead of like being like the child, the maid, like, you know, relationship, friendship, it opens up, you know, more characters outside of like the home, which is okay, but it's getting really wacky, but I find like really funny. You know, they're very self-aware of the jokes they make, you know, like the humor that goes on in the series, and I find it really funny. Like, outside of it being funny, it's very self-aware, lighthearted, and it just kind of like it picks up. Like, it's very interesting. Like, I find it. Stop using the word funny. I've said that shit 5 times. This is a very good series. Like, if someone like would read a bio or a definition of the show, you will not, like, just don't. Like, you will not find the show funny. If you look up any Wikipedia on this, you just have to watch it itself and kind of just form your own opinion, because I enjoy it. It's definitely like my number 2, but if I had to have someone break it down to me, I probably would never give it a watch. And I gave it a watch because it has really good Sakuga. That first episode probably took up most of the money from the production studio, because oh my god, like when she's at the computer,
it was so extra.
Right, when she's at the computer screen and she runs down the stairs, that's not some Sakuga you see every day. Like, that's some like movie animation Sakuga. But it's a really good series. What do you think about it, Kay, from me explaining how funny, and like I kind of sound like a Konosuba fan when I say, oh, it's so funny, but it's got a lot of good stuff outside of its comedy and like lightheartedness. What do you think about it?
Right, like a lot of the comedy is more reliant on making the maid look as idiotic as possible in her attempts to like, oh, I'm gonna marry this little girl. But they don't actually take it seriously. They're not like, she really, really wants to marry this little girl, so she's gonna marry this little girl because it's anime and lolly. No, like, they have her stand outside, like, trying to look through her window, and the police literally come and arrest her. And the neighbors will talk shit, like, what the hell is she wearing? Like, what are you doing, you creep?
Right, I think
so,
it's like...
I think a lot of the criticism about it, like, promoting pedophilia is kind of overblown, because the show already knows what kind of content it is, and so they kind of go out of their way to make sure that, no, we're not actually promoting this. We want to make the person like trying to get, like, we're trying to make this lolicon look stupid is basically the premise of the show.
Right. I feel like the maid is a perfect example of like what a goof type of scenario this would be. Like, and I feel like the lolicon, it feels like more of a side gag, because like I wouldn't even say that's like the main focus. Like the focus is kind of like to get her out her shell, or like outside her house basically, like when she goes to school, or like when she meets a friend, or like even like trying like eating meals and stuff. Like I feel like that's the main focus of like trying to establish like the child like as a character, like, hey, be a normal being, don't just be a shut-in all your life. But at the same time, you know, you have to have like, you know, goofy humor and gags just to like as a little side note thing. Like it's not
right, like it is basically like a gag, like how some characters will be like, oh, I eat a lot of food, like Charming in Black Clover.
Yeah.
She's basically a gag, like a walking gag, where all she wants to do is eat. And that's basically what this maid is she was walking around and she wants to like dote on this little girl, but at the same time, like Misha, the little girl, she isn't like, oh, look at her, she's being so nice, oh my god, I'm so innocent and pure. She's like, no, I want this lady out, like she's annoying, I don't like her, I want her out.
And I feel like that's the reason why the lolicon stuff like comes into place, because like you can't not continue, but like you can't really base a series if the main focus is like this little girl staying at the house 24/7. Like you gotta force her to like either get out or like come up with like some weird contraption to set her on fire, which like the series does a lot. Like they do a lot to like kill this maid, like straight up. Like I think there's one episode where like this girl has like a pistol outside and like tries to shoot somebody. But like it's just one of those things where like they're very creative, like, okay, like we've taken this step of like being a shut-in to like now she's going to school, now she's making her first friend, she's coming across, you know, like either I think it's like another maid or like a cosplayer, one of those two. But like, you know, they definitely switch it up after the third or fourth episode, but it's those like beginning episodes where it's like really established, like, hey, we know what we're doing, this is really a side gag to actually build character development, you know, so on and so forth, and we're self-aware that we want to expand and horizon these characters outside of just, you know, let me touch you in the house, blah 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 type of deal.
Right. And like it's not even just the maid's main gag either. Like she really does go out of her way to try and like educate Misha about like society. Of like that episode where she was telling her, like, if there was a bear sitting in your classroom, you would stare, right? And she was like, yeah, I would stare because it's a bear. And she's like, well, yeah, that's why people stare at you, because you're just different. Like, that's just how people are. They'll stare at you because you're different. And so she does those things where she'll take her out and she'll give her like life lessons that she grows from, to the point where like now she's hanging out with friends and going out a lot more than she used to, because now she knows it's okay to talk to people outside of her comfort zone.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that episode up, because that was the same episode where, like, afterwards she started going to school again, because the dad definitely wasn't going to do anything about it. And I guess like two key moments that really stood out for me was the toilet paper one, because like when she first mentions it in the first episode, when like the hamster brings the camera to the laundry, she's like, you need to wipe professionally, this and that, blah blah blah, and then she starts marking how much of the roll she uses, and she's like, oh, I've noticed you use a lot more roll of toilet paper, so you listen to what I said. She's like, how the hell you notice? She was like, well, I sneak out the rolls and like write this like little kanji note type shit on it. And then another instance is like she's playing this MMO game. She's like, oh, I'm gonna be friends with her, get even close. And then it's just like, are you really a little girl, blah blah blah, elementary school? Like, oh shit, there's a lot of pedophiles on this fucking game. Like, I gotta make sure she's safe. So like it's a lot of those incidents where it's like it teaches like, hey, like this is like what you avoid, but she's just also being very goofy about it at the same time.
Right.
Yeah, like the show's very self-aware. Like whoever clowns this show, you guys are the same idiots that fucking watch Boku no Pico. Just straight up, bro. Like that show would have never got a second season if people didn't actually like it. So if y'all shit on the maid anime, y'all just ain't worth shit to begin with. But it's very self-aware. I really like it. It's definitely, like I said, my favorite not my favorite, but second favorite this year. But with that being said, here we go with another one I never got a chance to watch yet. It's called Miss Vampire Who Lives in My Neighborhood. You want to explain this one for the audience?
So Miss Vampire Lives in My Neighborhood is about two, well, not just specifically two, but the two main characters are Sophie, who is a vampire who lives in the neighborhood, and Akari, who stumbles upon her after she like listens to her friends. They're like there's this spirit that walks around. If you go in the forest at night, you'll meet. And she's like, okay, I want to meet her. So she goes, and then she meets Sophie. And Sophie's just kind of like, hey, like, let's hang out. And Akari's kind of like really naive. And she wants to make friends. Like, she really likes making friends. But she likes Sophie specifically because she looks like a doll. And that's kind of like, it's not her fetish, but it's like her hobby that she'll like make and create costumes for, like, God, I don't know what they're called. Like, just dolls in general. Not figures, but like those creepy dolls with the really detailed eyes that just look really freaky.
You mean mannequins?
No, not mannequins. They're really realistic dolls that look like little girls.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, I can't think
The
of
ones
the
like
name
the really
either.
frilly. Yeah, I don't know if they're
I've seen
just
them
called
before,
anything. Yeah, they're creepy as fuck. But like, she hangs out with Sophie, and Sophie lives in like this gigantic mansion in the middle of a normal neighborhood, and she like lives like sort of this old lady who gives her food that she can't eat 'cause she's a vampire. And Akari's kind of like, you live like a really lonely life, because she watches anime and like orders blood and stuff on Amazon.
Relatable.
And sleeps, right? And all she does is like revolve her life around anime because there's nothing else to do. There's no one else to talk to. Everyone she's known is like dead. So Akari's like, I want to live with you now. I'm going to ask my parents. And her parents are like, okay, go live with your friend. And from there, like, she kind of teaches Sophie about socializing and making friends, to the point where like when they're not there, Sophie really feels isolated and alone. And she's like, I really lived like this for 300 years. So it's funny, but at the same time, it's really endearing to watch like someone like break out of their shell. Kind of like Misha in Uzame. Like, Sophie is kind of like in the same boat where all they do is sit inside and never do anything. But that one person is all they need, and like they're like, oh, I really enjoy being around people.
From that description, it reminds me of another anime, but this one does it way better. This reminds me, have you ever heard of the series or manga called It's Not My Fault That I'm Not Popular or some dumb shit?
Oh, Watamote?
Yeah. So this sounds like that, but this sounds way interesting because like she has a friend, she's not like a total outcast, and like in that series, like, you can't blame me to be popular, like whatever translation. That one is just awkward. like
It's
this sounds...
awkward because there's no redemption for her. Like, she's just fucked 24/7.
Right. Also, she puts herself in like weird predicaments too. Like, she tries, but it's just like, damn, I should have just not tried, and would have probably
like, it's relatable in a way. Like, oh yeah, I thought about that once about the popular kids when I was in school.
Also, I think like, I can't really speak for Japan, but like in America, if you like, well, I better be real careful with my wording on this one. As a female, from what I've witnessed, it's not hard to make friends. Like, really, like, people won't really bat an eye towards you if you do something dumb or silly. So in that show, I was like, and not hard, like, you can't blame me because I'm not popular. It was like relatable. It was like, all right, some of this stuff seems like kind of far-fetched. Like,
right, I mean, it's meant to be like exaggerated because it's manga and anime, and it should be to make it funny. But when like she tries and never really achieves her goal, it just makes it really awkward because it's like, when is she gonna like at least be happy for one?
Yeah, like, and then like other incident, like, damn, we're talking about a completely different show. But yeah, now this, what's it called? Show notes. My vampire who lives near my neighborhood, it definitely sounds a lot more interesting. It's something I'm definitely gonna have to check out.
It's really cute too. Like, it's like standard moe stuff, but there's like a lot of like, you know, lessons to be learned from the show and stuff. But it's really entertaining to watch. I like it a lot.
And you gave a better description, far more than I probably ever could have. Now, I think from what I'm looking at, this is picked up by Crunchyroll, right?
Yeah, I think that one, I don't know if it's licensed by them, but you can watch it on Crunchyroll.
Now,
but I never actually watched it.
Yeah, we'll get to that towards the end of the series. But Goblin Slayer, for me, is a fantastic series. If you guys don't know, Goblin Slayer is done by the same studio, it's done by the studio White Fox, who've done ReZero, Akame That Kill, and Steins Gate. There we go. But yeah, Studio White Fox, they have a lot of series, or they pick up a lot of series with a lot of controversy in it and a lot of mature themes, sorry. And I think that's kind of the point of Goblin Slayer. It's a very serious series. It's not meant for, like, teenagers or kids. It's like, hey, this is somewhat the real world and like the consequences that come of it, you know, during these situations. And it's a very mature anime. I think it has like even a warning at the first and like 5th episode where it's like, hey, we have mature, violent, you know, very disturbing scenes where if you're uncomfortable, stop watching, like as a disclaimer. But it's a really good series, and we'll get to the controversy towards the end of the show notes. But I think people just base it off of that one episode, which is only in episode 1 for like 5 seconds. And I think they just really missed the purpose as the show as a whole. Like, even when the character Goblin Slayer, who's the protagonist, explains to the priestess, like, you know, this is the world we live in. Your adventure is not the same as my adventure, and you will experience more incidents like death and, you know, very gruesome moments if you continue following this path. And, you know, she's like, you know, hey, I'm willing to do that. I just need a hand once in a while and just someone to call a friend. He's like, you know, I can do that in a sense. Like, I can't really promise you everything, but I can promise I can be your friend. And I really think that shows the maturity of the show, was that you can have lighthearted, simple moments like that and show that, you know, there is, you know, humanity, you know, there is, you know, inside somebody there are a human being, no matter what they go through, no matter what they see. You know, there is, you know, you do need a helping hand in life, and you do need someone to pull you out of that dark tunnel, which I think the first episode tried to portray, but people to see it as a different way. And you can't go further beyond than, again, they give a disclaimer, that scene is only 5 seconds, and outside of that, it's just like, this, it's a mature anime. Like, I don't get this notion that anime has to be this happy-go-lucky, you know, slice of life type of deal thing with these fantasy style settings, if we know that anime is, you know, a bunch of different genres, variety, and like different age types, and you get hurt over one scene. Like, it still blows my mind how like people still have that mindset to this day, where I think, you know, anime is pretty established. Like, we've come a long way to like bad dubs in the 90s to really fleshed out, you know, well-telling stories, to like this one scene just blows everybody's mind, which is just crazy. But Goblin Slayer in a lot of ways shows the darkest moments in the most brutal ways possible, but also shows the lightheartedness between the characters and moments in life in general, which I think it does very well. And I think this shows that, like, hey, we have these gruesome scenes, but at the same time, our meaning and what in our wording as characters and as human beings means so much more to like what you see on the screen or manga panels. But I almost ran out of breath there. I think that kind of covers it for Goblin Slayers for me, and we'll talk about the controversial thing in later on in the show notes. Did you kind of want to touch upon anything that I had mentioned, or was I muted that entire time?
You're pretty much spot on with everything I was thinking too.
Really? I thought my computer crashed or something, but thank you. But yeah, no, as I would rank the series, I would rank it number 1, to be honest with you, just because I haven't seen an anime like Goblin Slayer since ReZero, and funny enough, they're done by the same company. But I think that the notion that when you hear them have conversation, it just shows you that no matter how hard life gets, that you can always just turn on somebody at the most darkest times and they can relate, or they'll always have you back, you know, have your back and lift you up. And I think those are the moments that matter the most, you know, outside of the brutal like murders and like death scenes you'll see, or rape scenes, whatever. You know, those conversations, those, you know, being able to relate and connect, you know, to a person really matters the most in these scenes, like manga panels. And like, you know, even with, I think her name's the one-eyed or like blind maiden, you know, she'll say like, you know, humans are weak and fragile, but like, because we can rely on each other, you know, we become so much stronger as people, and that like really connected to me. But, you know, people don't see that. People just see that one scene in the first episode and call it a day. But let's go on to something that people probably actually care about, and that is SS Gridman. There we go, I said it right the first time. Right, SS Gridman, also known as that thick girl in the anime that's not actually thick, that's his fucking artist. So yeah, SS Gridman. I kind of talked about Goblin Slayer a lot. Is this one you haven't seen that much?
I haven't seen it at all.
Okay.
I only know Rika's thick.
Right.
That's all I know from the internet, is that Rika is thick.
Right. So I think most of you have seen not just Rika thick thighs, but Gridman. You guys got clickbaited because Rika's not actually thick at all. Like, I don't think she even wears Ted hose in the anime. But now SS Gridman. I'll touch upon this because I honestly, to be real, I went into this series blind, and I think this is actually a sequel or it's a continuation to either a live action series that continued or some other mecha series. But because I've been meaning to talk about Gridman for the longest time, but so many series, so much stuff going on in the industry that it's hard to like make a proper video and talk about your experience. And I've asked Kay, like, hey, you seen Gridman? She's like, I don't really fuck with mech shows. I was like, no, it's not about the mechs, like, it's about the thickness. Like, not that either. Like, but no, SS Gridman, to put it, the best way to put it is about the characters, like their interactions and like how they interpret life and the way they kind of go about like situations, like emotions and stuff like that is the best reason to watch the show. Like kind of the main villain, I can't remember her name, it's the character with the purple white hair. Like, she's basically an otaku, and she basically like she gets pushed around, doesn't say, like, people don't tell her sorry. She's like, okay, I'm just gonna kill these people that apparently just end up going to my high school. And that's when the main cast kind of kick in, and you have these giant mech battles. But it's honestly about the character interactions and like how they interpret emotions, like sadness or like apologies or like how you should be as a person. And it does a really good job at it. This is licensed by Funimation. I haven't watched the dub, but it's 50-50. It's okay, and it's not at the same time. And there are the mech battles, which I've heard the mech battles are good, don't get me wrong, but I'm not into kaijus. So when I went into the first episode, I was like, okay, what the fuck ever. And then I watched the second episode, I was like, oh, I really like this opening, and the ending is really great too. And what else I was going to mention? And again, it's just about the character interactions that I like the most. Like, they feel like real, not only real people, but like real like high school teenagers. I was like, that's pretty clever and quirky how they would pronounce and say certain things, or like how they express their emotions. And it has really good sakuga too. And weirdly enough, Studio Trigger hasn't talked about this series until it released, which is weird as fuck. But I just find that very interesting. But now SS Gridman is a really good show. This would probably have to be number 5 on my list when it comes to anime, because while the characters are very interesting, I know that this show is mostly about the Gundam battles, and this being a continuation of something that's already existed, which I'm not sure what that really is either, because there are a lot of mecha shows, there's a lot of robot shows in Japan, and I just can't keep up to date with so much stuff being flooded within the industry, anime wise, and Tokyo and Japan itself. So I do think I went about that part about Gridman.
All I know is Rick is thick.
Right, right, from the artist that draw her. So let's see. So SS Gridman, it's pretty good. That has been picked up and licensed by Funimation. And speaking of openings, I actually skipped out. What do you Radiant? I'm be dead ass honest with you guys, like watching at home. I watched 3 episodes, like it was really good. Like it started off really nice, like how these, like they're basically wizards, just straight up. How these wizards are basically like portrayed as evil people, but then he's like, no, like I'm not a bad guy, I'm not gonna fucking join you evil, like blah blah blah. Other wizards, I'm just like, bro, this sounds like a Shonen Jump, like it sounds like a Shonen Jump plot. And be honest with you, and what really killed the show for me is I think that the hive is called Radiance, and he's like, okay, I'll kill all of them, and then like the wizards won't be seen as like bad people. So he's like, it's basically like Attack on Titan, like meets like any other like Shonen Jump plot, and like that's what honestly killed it for me. And I was like, okay, I was like, that really, like it just set like a somber tone in my mouth. Like I was like, dog, like this feels like those like Shonen Jump series that gets dropped, like not the ones that get canceled, like the ones that like they should like put, like they'll slide like, hey, like I'm a really good manga artist, like an internship in a sense. I'd be like, oh, you're good, but you're not good at storytelling, so we're not gonna put this in the magazines. Like it feels like those type of situations.
I feel like Radiant only has its hype because it's a French manga. Where it started out as God, where am I going with it? Is a French manga from a French artist that got adapted to Japanese, and now it's an anime. And I think that's where the hype lies, but the story isn't that great, so nobody really cares much.
Yeah, and I know Viz
I just find it the same, like, I want to be the best of this, and I'm going to be the best because I have this special power that grants me
I can
ability
punch
to
things
become
with
the
one
best.
hand and shit just works out for me apparently. Also, I got
It's
weird.
like, how many times do we have to see this trope of I'm gonna be the best leader of the pack kind of shit?
Right, like it feels a mix of like Attack on Titan mixed with Pokemon, like, and like
It's like a mix of Black Clover, Naruto, One Piece, Fairy Tail.
And I know this dude's he has these like weird horns on his head, so I know he's like magic mixed with demon. Like, come on, bro. Like, I'm tired of seeing that trope.
Right, where like the main character doesn't like know his potential, and then one day it's gonna like just reveal, oh, I'm a half this.
Right, like demon got me. Like, oh, like okay, now I got these powers. Make sense. Like, bro, like I'm tired of hearing. Like, it was very like I will say, like the first 2 episodes were like they're established. Like he's trying to like figure out like, do I want to join this bad guy like magic, guild people where I'm kind of seen as like, I'm sorry, I got tongue tied. He's trying to like figure out, should I join the people that I'm most like that I have the same powers as, even though they're bad guys, or should I stick around with the humans that just treat me like garbage all the time? He's like, I'm just gonna do the right thing and protect them. And I was like, okay, that's very cool. Like, that's a very good way of like establishing like what's between right and wrong and like how to go about life and stuff like that. But then after that happens, he's like, oh, I'll destroy this like nest where all like the radiants or whatever the creatures are called are coming from. And I'll just make us look like good guys and save the town, blah blah blah, superhero stuff. I was like, okay, now you just made it like, you've made it lame, and you've basically put out like, you've basically established what the series is about, which I was like, I'm done after that, because it's like I'm gonna be honest with you, Radiant does not have the best writing at all. Like, it's very flat. Like the setups, characters, it's very straightforward. And it's just like, okay, I'm not like. I'll say this about Radiant: the characters look very cool from their designs, but after that, writing garbage, OST garbage, everything else not really interesting.
Like the opening song and the ending song aren't even that good either.
Oh yeah, that opening song is just guitars. Like, there's no lyrics in that opening. Like, I was like, whew. I was like, who fucking picked up this show? I do like the ending song. I think it's very catchy, but there's kind of a problem. I've looked it up, and as to this day, there's still no full version.
Maybe it's not out yet.
I hope that's the case, because when SS Gridman came out, I think it was like the 3rd week or day, the full opening and ending came out. I was like, either this show has a full version or they really just half-assed it.
Yeah, they usually come out. Like, openings usually come out after episode 8, like, but some people get like the leaks early.
I see. Because but yeah, I hate to shit on any Radiance fan. I'm sorry, but this is very generic and kind of straightforward. Like, it's drawn very well. I will say this.
Yeah, like I'm like the art is in the manga, at least, because I read a few chapters. It's really good. Like, the art is. I just find the story really
boring,
lacking.
Yeah, like I will say, like I think with Viz Media, because they are also like trying to push this. I think they were like, they saw like, oh, this looks really good. Did you read it? Fuck no. We're just gonna put it out there because it looks good. But like I said, like I'll give it, like, visually it looks great. I like the ED. It has a very catchy tune, but storytelling wise, it just doesn't carry. It doesn't carry itself enough where I want to continue. Like, I feel like, I'm be straight up honest with you, bro. A lot of people hate me for. I feel like this is why you have a secondary character like in your stories. Like, this is why you have a Sasuke. This is why you have a Yuno. This is why you have some type of like rival type to like balance out between the corniness and like the edginess between your stories.
Right.
Because think of every Shonen Jump series. Most of the time they either have the main character is so edgy that he needs a goofy like character, or the main character is so goofy he needs someone very serious. And I think with this with Radiant, all like the main cast are like just straight up goofballs. And I'm not saying that the series is goofy, but I'm saying that because of its like corny nature between and like, since they're like, oh, I just want to kill like all the Radiants, they're like this hive to like make ourselves look good. It doesn't like, there's no seriousness to like be like, oh, okay, this is just like your Saturday morning kids cartoon. So yeah, I feel like it falls in a lot of factors, and this, I don't know, it looks good, but I know it could be more if it just had the right push and people on it. Whew. Wow, what the fuck we talked about that was so long. But moving on. I'm sorry, Kay. I know you're like, fuck. Is this what a podcast is like?
No, I've listened to many podcasts before.
Oh, okay, dude. I see. You normally don't get bored after like an hour into it.
No, I love talking about anime. I never get bored.
Hey, well, I'm glad to hear that because this one may be the complete opposite. So, also other things we've been watching are anime, adaptation movies or anime movies, and the one me at K.